I have 3 of these smaller vises. This one is only 3.5 inches across the top. This vise works great, but it's not very deep. This is only 2.5 inches. So I'm going to build one that is at least 6 inches across the top and then 5 to 6 inches deep, or at least that's what I'm thinking right now. We'll see how it goes. Right now I'm just digging through some scrap metal that I have and just some junk that I've collected. I've got these 2 plates right here. I mean, I could weld the actual vise to one, use one for a stand that I want to build, and then I can just bolt them together. The only thing that I have spent money on so far is this Acme rod, and I bought 4 nuts that go with it. You can make these using just all thread or threaded rod, but I just went ahead and bought an Acme rod or a lead screw because the grooves are much deeper, so I feel like it's going to take a lot more clamping force and pressure. I don't feel like this is going to strip out as easy, and the same goes for the nuts. I don't feel like with those grooves being so much deeper that they're going to strip as easy. If you go cranking down on that vise, hopefully it'll last a lot longer. This is going to be the base of my vise. I believe it's 3/8 thick. I'm going to take a grinder and just knock this little bit down right here. I have just ground down the welds that were left on here from cutting something off of here, and I'm going to take a wire wheel, and it's got some grease and some paint. I'm just going to take a wire wheel and try to knock the rest of this off of here. I'm going to use this piece of 2x2 by 1/4 inch steel, and then I'm going to build a box to go over it out of this piece of angle iron. This is 5/16. This is 1/4 inch thick steel. I'm going to cut this little piece of flat bar and use this to weld the nuts to. Okay, so here's my little piece of flat steel. These 2 nuts will get welded to this, and I was going to weld this onto here, and this would go on there like so. And I actually had this little piece, and it fits perfectly to slide. So I got to thinking, if I welded down the sides of this, then this won't fit in here any longer because it's perfect the way it is. If I run a bead down the sides, it's going to be too fat, and this is going to rub and get stuck on it. So then it hit me, if these get worn out or stripped, or I break one, let's say I break one of the welds, I have no way to get this out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill 2 holes here, and then I'm going to drill and tap this plate, because the cover to this, the actual vise body is going to be welded solid. There'll be no way to get to this to replace it or repair it. I may crank down on this vise and snap one of these nuts off. This is all just mild steel. I've marked out the center of this. So before I make these holes any bigger, I'm going to go ahead and mark this plate where I need to drill the holes on the plate. So I just have several different sizes of drill bits, and what I'm going to do is just step it up. It just makes drilling the steel a little easier. Okay, so the last hole, this has to be drilled differently from this. These holes are going to be bigger where the bolt can just slide right through from the bottom up. And this needs to be drilled the correct size for the tap. I'm going to be using a 3/8 16 bolt or machine screw. For now, I'm going to stick a bolt in it. I've got to go get 2 machine screws. To be able to tap this, a 3/8 16 thread, I'm going to drill it out with a 5/16 drill bit. And that'll be just a little bit smaller than the 3/8, and that'll allow that tap to go in there. I have to flip this clamp over because I'm trying to keep my arms and hands out of the way for the video. But every time I punch through, I jab my arm on this clamp bar. And I've only done it about 8 or 10 times now before I realized I should just flip it over. Now let's bring you down in there. This part is sped up, but with the tap you want to go in and out, not just straight through. You go in a little bit and then you come back out to remove those metal chips. If you just try to drive it straight through, you're going to break the tap. I've got this plate sitting on these 2x2 tubes because I'm having to use these bolts temporarily until I go and get 2 machine screws. So I've got the mill scale grinded off and I'm ready to weld my nuts onto this plate. Okay, this is what the inside of my vise is going to look like. So I've just got these 2 nuts welded to this little plate and I've got it bolted up through the bottom. So I've cut several of these and I've already knocked the mill scale off of the edges. I've got 2 of these 6-inch pieces of 2x2 tube, and this is going to be my jaws. What I'm going to do with these is I'm going to use them to cap these tubes. I have another one that I'm going to cap this tube right here, and then I'll drill a hole in it for this threaded rod to come through. So I got the ends of these jaws capped, and I'm going to grind the sharp edges off. I'm just going to knock it down. I got a hole drilled in the cap for this right here. I'm going to get this tacked on. Got my thumb good that time. Grinder life. I'm going to take this nut and thread it on, figure out where it goes, and then I'm going to weld it on. Okay, I got it where I want it. I'm gonna get it welded on the back side. Well, I thought I was recording, but I wasn't. So I got the nut where I wanted. I just threw a tack on it. So I'm gonna take this tube and check it one more time. So the nut on the inside will get welded up, and then eventually this nut will go on here and it'll get welded on, and this is where the handle will be, where you turn this thing. I'm gonna have to get some different gloves so you don't have to keep seeing that bloody thumb. But you don't want to tighten this all the way down. You want to leave a little bit of a gap so that when both nuts are welded up, the rod can actually spin. How about that? Look, my thumb looks all better now. Okay, now that I got this nut on the inside finally put on, I can shorten this rod up. We're just gonna get us a little mark in here, and I'm gonna chop this rod off. I bought a 3-foot rod. My options were 12 inches and 36 inches. I was looking to get a 2-footer, but that's cool. I'll save this other rod for another project. I've been wanting one of these bits. You know, this is a cheap one I got on Amazon. And what it does is you stick it in a drill and it just knocks all the burrs and stuff off. Because when you cut a bolt or a threaded rod, I'm used to just taking a grinder and you just kind of knock the edge down. That way when you take it out of a nut, you can actually get it back in there. We're going to try this and see how it works. Hopefully it's not, you know, a piece of junk. Well, I don't know. The real test is going to be, let me back this rod out of these nuts and try to put it right back in. Let me lock my little crank handle on here. Some of us have had several vehicles where we had to roll our windows up and down this way. All right, can you see what I got going on? I should back you up a little bit. Let's get a little better view here. Can you see that? How's that look? A little better. So it's out of the first one there. Let's see if I can get it to thread back in easily. Yeah, I like that. So now I want to build the body of the vise. So there it is. There is the body. Now this is 2x2, and I could have just went and bought a hitch sleeve. Oh, here's one right here. So I actually used this on my tractor. It was bolted on the bucket for a long time. This is a receiver sleeve, receiver tube, and it actually takes the 2x2 perfect. And you can buy these, well, I can buy a whole stick of it, but you know, you can buy 6, 8, 12 inches of this already cut. And I could have just bought this, cut the bottom out of it. But this is 1/4 inch. This is actually only 3/16. And this is 5/16 plate that I cut up. I'm trying to make it a little bit beefier. I've got my 2 sides tacked on, and I just used this is actually the back of a spiral notebook to give me some spacing, but It's a little bigger gap on the top than I want, and I need to get rid of this mill scale anyways. So I'm gonna just grind this down until I get my top a little tighter. It's probably an 1/8 of an inch gap right now. I'm looking for about a 1/16. Okay, so I got it ground down. I put a little bit of a bevel on it and a little bit of a bevel on these sides, mainly because I want to grind this smooth, make it nice and pretty. I mean, you get better penetration, but also you're not welding as much on the outside. The wire actually has somewhere to go. So I'm going to lay these two pieces up here. Okay, let me get it tacked up. Just got all this knocked down. I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make it look really nice. I think I'm just going to go ahead and body fill and paint it. Next step, I'm going to do my jaws, and I think I'm going to make them 6 inches deep. I need to get this side tacked up, and then I can get a measurement for this little piece here for this side. I went ahead and beveled this, and I just knocked all the mill scale off of this 2x2. I'm going to flip it over, just double check it. That's going to be a super deep jaw. Okay, so to get the height of this one, because it's going to be a little shorter, I'm just going to take this jaw, (3 9/16). Here's my jaws. So I need to get my jaw pads, and I found this piece of 1 inch by I think 3/16 steel, but I only found one long enough. But I have several of these. I'm just going to cut another 1 inch strip out of this piece of 1/4-inch plate. This, I'm going to weld it onto here. I finally went and bought some machine screws. They have an Allen head on them. So what I got to do is take these 2 bolts out and countersink these holes so that that'll sit down in there and the bottom of this will be completely flat. I don't have a countersink quite big enough. The head of this is a little bit bigger than the biggest countersink that I have. So I'm going to use a countersink and I'm going to use a big 3/4-inch drill bit. I'm going to use a combination of things. So I got these 2 machine screws in. It's just an Allen head and it sits flat. Here's the 2 parts to my vise. I've got a lot of this 1/2-inch round rod, so I'm just going to use a piece of it for now to turn the vise. But before I call this finished, I'm going to clean some of the welds up. I'm going to body fill this thing and I'm going to paint it. got my first coat of Bondo put on and sanded down. I'm going to prime this and see what it's looking like. I know there's several spots that need to be touched up, but I'm not looking for perfection. I don't know, I'm really just messing around if nothing else. So we'll just see what it looks like with everything smoothed and painted. So okay, let's get this thing primed. So while I'm waiting on my primer to dry, I've got this brake rotor. It's pretty heavy. I'm not sure if it's going to be heavy enough to make my stand out of. I've also got this piece of 3x3 right here. I think I'm going to cut it off right here, and I'll deal with that. See how rusty this is, but even though this is just some junk I'm working on in my shop, I still like to grind through all that so that I can get a good weld on it. So I'm probably going to speed this part up, but you can see there's a gap right here. And I don't know if you'll be able to tell with the video being sped up, but when I get to the middle, I stop, and it's because I keep blowing through. I didn't do it on the first pass, but the last two passes, when I got to the middle, I blew through. And so I had to stop, and when the red started to cool down, I could light it back up. This gap is from the hole that's in the center of this drum. So that was another spot. I got over here to the middle and blew through, but you can see it doesn't look bad. I don't know how well these are going to show up on this video, but you know, it smells terrible. Whatever paint this is, it's got to have some kind of epoxy or something in it, because it doesn't smell. I've burned through a lot of paint, and it smells terrible. All right, here is my stand. It feels like it's going to be heavy enough to hold the weight of the vise. And once we get the vise bolted up, if I need to cut a slot and straighten it up because of this right here where it's bent, we'll just take care of that later. It's no big deal. It does look like this is leaning, but I mean, I hadn't even put a level on it. I'm just pushing on through. I've been working on this vise off and on for 3 weeks. All right, I'm ready to get a coat of green on these for the second time. I had some leftover marking paint. Figured I would use it up. I've had it sitting around for 2 years. Well, I didn't realize it was water-based. I should have known that because, you know, marking paint, you go mark somebody's yard up, you don't want it to be permanent. But anyways, water-based spray paint over an oil-based, it doesn't work well. This is what we're going with, Rust-Oleum fluorescent. Let's get this thing painted. Just kind of lightly dusted it as a like a tack coat, I guess they call it. We'll give that a minute to dry, and then we'll try to lay some more down. Vise on my stand, and I'm going to end up putting some wheels on this thing so that I can roll it around. I'll video that when I do it. For now, I'm just going to use this 1/2-inch rod, and when I find something more permanent, I will let you know.